Welcome back to Primetime 70s, where we dig deep into the decade that gave us shag carpets, disco fever, and some of the most baffling TV writing decisions in television history. Today, we're talking about something that happened so often in the 70s, it practically became an art form. Characters who simply vanished into thin air. You know what I'm talking about. One week they're there, sharing family dinners and cracking jokes, and the next week, poof, gone. We call this phenomenon Chuck Cunningham Syndrome.
See, I'm changing my free throw from an underhand to an overhand.
Named after Richie's older brother on Happy Days, who disappeared somewhere between seasons 1 and 2, presumably into the same Bermuda Triangle that swallowed up countless other TV siblings, friends, and love interest. But Chuck wasn't alone. Oh no, he had plenty of company in the 1970s Hall of Vanished Characters. So grab your mood ring and settle in, because we're about to count down 10 forgotten faces who disappeared from your favorite shows without so much as a see you later. Number 10. Marsha Wallace as Carol Kester on The Bob Newhart Show.
Wait a minute. I sense that all is not well in Jerryland.
Wait. Before you start typing angry comments, hear me out. Marsha Wallace didn't vanish entirely, but her Bob Hartley's wonderfully neurotic receptionist had a habit of disappearing for entire episodes without explanation. One week, she'd be there fielding calls and delivering perfectly timed one-liners. The next week, some random temp would be sitting at her desk like Carol never existed. The behind-the-scenes reason? Well, simple scheduling conflicts and budget constraints. Voice work for The Simpsons wasn't paying the bills yet, so Marsha had to take other gigs, leaving poor Carol to exist in a state of quantum employment, simultaneously working and not working at the same time. But hey, at least when Carol disappeared, she eventually came back. Can't say the same for our next entry. Number 9. Thelma Hopkins as Verna Jean Williams on Tony Orlando and Dawn.
It's made of styrofoam.
Remember when variety shows tried to have recurring characters and storylines? Yeah, neither does anyone else, which is probably why Verna Jean Williams vanished faster than Tony Orlando's recording career. Verna Jean was Thelma Hopkins' character on Tony Orlando and Dawn. Not the musical guest Thelma Hopkins, mind you, but a fictional character she played in sketches. Verna Jean was the sassy neighbor who would pop up in various comedy bits, bring some much-needed attitude to what was essentially an hour of Tony Orlando trying to prove he was more than just the guy who sang Tie a Yellow Ribbon.
I don't see a yellow ribbon around.
But somewhere around the show's second season, Verna Jean just stopped showing up. No explanation, no farewell sketch, no forwarding address. One day she's there delivering zingers. The next day she was gone, leaving Tony Orlando to carry the comedy load himself. And if you've ever seen Tony Orlando try to be funny, you know that was a mistake. The real reason for Verna Jean's disappearance? The writers realized that variety shows and sitcom-style recurring characters mix about as well as bell-bottoms and bicycle riding. Poor Verna Jean was a victim of genre confusion, a sitcom character trapped in a variety show's body. Number 8. Philip McKeon as Tommy Hyatt on Alice.
We're allowed to ride these in the desert. That's why they're called dirt bikes.
Now, here's where things get really weird. Tommy Hyatt, Alice's teenage son on the dinner-based sitcom Alice, didn't technically disappear. Philip McKeon played him for the show's entire 9-season run. But here's the thing. Somewhere around season 4, the writers apparently forgot Tommy existed as anything more than scenery. Tommy started the show as a typical TV teenager, getting into mild trouble and having girlfriend problems, the usual sitcom kid stuff. But as the series progressed, he became less of a character and more of a piece of furniture that occasionally said, "Hi, Mom," before disappearing upstairs. By the final seasons, Tommy had less screen time than Mel's spatula. The behind-the-scenes reason? The writers discovered that workplace comedy worked better without family complications. Alice's relationships with Flo, Vera, and Mel were the show's bread and butter, and Tommy just got in the way of diner dynamics. So they kept him around, technically, but treated him like television wallpaper. Poor Philip McKeon went from co-star to background extra on his own show. That's not Chuck Cunningham Syndrome. No, that's something worse. That's Ghost Child Syndrome. And speaking of disappearing acts, don't let this video vanish from your watch history. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into TV's forgotten corners. Number 7. Bonnie Ursf as Jennifer Marlowe's sister on WKRP in Cincinnati.
Mr. Carlson, Mr. Travis is here to see you. Travis.
Okay, this one's a deep cut. In the first season of WKRP in Cincinnati, Jennifer Marlowe, the gorgeous, mysteriously wealthy receptionist, mentioned having a sister who was supposedly even more stunning and successful than she was. The sister was built up as this mythical figure who would occasionally be referenced in throwaway lines. Then, in one early episode, the sister actually appeared, played by Bonnie Ursf, in what was clearly intended to be a recurring role. She had the same sultry voice, the same mysterious wealth, and the same ability to make men forget their own names just by walking into a room. But after that one appearance, poof, gone. Jennifer went back to being an only child, apparently, and her sister vanished into whatever dimension stores unused sitcom relatives. The reason? Well, Lonnie Anderson was expensive enough as it was. They couldn't afford 2 blonde bombshells. So, Jennifer's sister joined the ranks of TV's disappeared relatives, leaving us to wonder what might have been if WKRP had gone full soap opera with the Marlowe family dynamics. Number 6. Various characters on What's Happening. What's Happening was a revolving door of disappearing characters. But let's focus on the most blatant case. Shirley, Raj's girlfriend, who appeared in several first-season episodes before vanishing completely. Shirley was set up as Raj's primary love interest, a sweet, smart girl who seemed perfect for a lovably nerdy protagonist. She appeared in multiple episodes, had her own subplot, and seemed destined to become a series regular. The writers even gave her a personality beyond girl who likes the main character, which was revolutionary for 1970s television. But then Season 2 rolled around, and Shirley had apparently moved to another dimension. No breakup scene, no explanation, no mention of what happened. Raj just went back to being single, and viewers were left wondering if they'd imagined the whole relationship. What happened? Budget cuts and cash shakeups. The show couldn't afford to keep all its supporting players, so Shirley got the axe. But instead of writing her out properly, the writers just pretended she never existed. Classic 70s move. Number 5. Michael James Wixted as Mickey Malf on Happy Days.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days.
Speaking of Happy Days, and we were with Chuck Cunningham, let's talk about another vanishing act from everyone's favorite nostalgic sitcom. Mickey Malf, Ralph Malf's little brother, appeared in several early episodes as a miniature version of his joke-telling sibling. Mickey was clearly being set up as the little brother character. You know, the annoying kid who tags along and gets into trouble while trying to impress the older kids. He had his own mini-storylines and everything. It looked like the Cunningham house was going to get even more crowded. So why did Mickey vanish? Same reason as Chuck. The writers realized that adding more family members just complicated storylines without adding much value. Happy Days worked best when it focused on the core group of teenagers, and little brothers just got in the way of the leather jacket wearing, motorcycle riding, Fonzie worshipping action. Before we continue with our countdown, remember to give this video a thumbs up if you're enjoying this trip down television's memory lane, and let us know in the comments which vanished character you remember most. Number 4. Janet Louise Johnson as Nurse Carol on MASH. Now, here's a disappearing act that actually made some sense, even if it confused viewers at the time. Nurse Carol appeared in several early episodes of MASH as a potential love interest for various characters and a general addition to the medical staff. But then Carol just stopped appearing. No transfer orders, No Dear John letter, no explanation. She went from being a semi-regular character to being completely absent, leaving viewers to wonder if she'd been shipped out or had been simply evaporated in the Korean heat. The behind-the-scenes reason? MASH was still finding its identity in those early seasons. The writers were experimenting with different character combinations and storylines, and Carol became a casualty of that creative process. She wasn't bad, she just wasn't essential. In hindsight, it was probably the right call. MASH worked best with a tight ensemble, and adding more permanent cast members might have diluted the chemistry. But poor Carol never even got a proper goodbye. She just faded away like morning mist over the 4077. Number 3. Denny Miller as Duke Shannon on Wagon Train. Okay, Wagon Train technically started in the late 50s, but it rolled right into the 70s, so we're counting it in. Duke Shannon, played by the towering Denny Miller, was a scout who joined the Wagon Train in the show's later seasons. Duke was supposed to be the new action hero, a tough, capable frontiersman who could handle any crisis that threatened the Wagon Train. He had the look, he had the presence, and he had the acting chops to carry dramatic storylines. But Duke Shannon's tenure on Wagon Train was shorter than a mayfly's lifespan in the Old West. He appeared for part of one season before vanishing completely. No explanation, no farewell scene, no Duke rode off into the sunset moment. He just stopped being there. What happened? Creative differences and contract disputes. Denny Miller and the show's producers couldn't agree on the character's direction, so they decided to part ways. But instead of writing Duke out properly, they just pretended he never existed. Poor Duke Shannon became another victim of television's out-of-sight, out-of-mind philosophy. One day he was there protecting the Wagon Train. The next day he was gone, leaving viewers to wonder if they'd simply imagined the whole thing. Number 2. Lee Merryweather as Dr. Ann McGregor on the Time Tunnel. The Time Tunnel was a short-lived sci-fi series that ran from 1966 to 1967, but it continued in reruns throughout the early 70s, confusing a whole new generation of viewers with its disappearing act. Dr. Ann McGregor, played by Lee Merryweather, was the brilliant scientist who worked on the Time Tunnel project. She was competent, attractive, and provided both brains and beauty to the show's cast. McGregor was clearly intended to be a major character. She was there from the pilot episode and seemed essential to the show's premise. But then, somewhere in the middle of the first and only season, Dr. McGregor just stopped appearing. No explanation, no transfer to another project, no nothing. She went from being a regular cast member to being completely absent, leaving the Time Tunnel project suspiciously short-staffed. The reason for McGregor's disappearance? Budget cuts and creative changes. The producers decided the show worked better with a smaller cast, and Lee Merryweather became an expensive casualty. But instead of writing her out properly, they just stopped including her in episodes. The really frustrating part? Dr. McGregor was actually a well-developed female character in a genre that usually treated women as window dressing. Her disappearance was a loss for both the show and for representation in science fiction television. And number 1, Chuck Cunningham on Happy Days.
Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days.
And here we are, back where we started, with Chuck Cunningham, the disappeared brother who became so infamous that he gave his name to an entire television phenomenon. Chuck Cunningham started Happy Days as Richie's older brother, a basketball-playing, college-bound teenager who seemed like he'd be a major part of the Cunningham family dynamic. He appeared in early episodes, had his own storylines, and was clearly intended to be a series regular. But then Chuck Cunningham did something unprecedented in television history. He didn't just disappear, he was actively erased from existence. Not only did he stop appearing in episodes, but the other characters stopped mentioning him entirely. Richie went from being a middle child to being the oldest son, and nobody ever asked what happened to Chuck. It was like Chuck had been hit by a television memory wipe. One day he existed. The next day, he had never existed at all. Even his bedroom got repurposed without explanation. Talk about adding insult to injury. The behind-the-scenes reason? Well, the writers realized that Chuck didn't serve any purpose in the show's dynamic. Happy Days worked better when it focused on Richie and his friends, and having an older brother around just complicated storylines without adding value. But Chuck's disappearance was so blatant, so completely unexplained, that it became legendary. He didn't just vanish, he became the patron saint of vanished TV characters everywhere. And there you have it. 10 characters who vanished from 1970s television without a trace, leaving behind nothing but confused viewers and empty spaces in the opening credits. So, tell me in the comments, which of these vanishing acts do you remember? Or better yet, which ones had you completely fooled? Did you even notice when these characters disappeared? Or were you too distracted by the polyester and disco music to care? And while you're down there in the comments, make sure to subscribe to Primetime 70s and hit that notification bell, because we've got plenty more deep dives into television's forgotten corners coming your way. Next week, we're counting down the most ridiculous hairstyles in 70s TV. And trust me, there are some doozies. Until then, keep watching the classics. And remember, in the 1970s, anyone could disappear at any time. Even you, if you forget to subscribe.